In an era where the entire video game industry was racing towards the cold, sharp edges of 3D polygons, a small group of artists led by Doug Tennepool decided to go in the exact opposite direction. While everyone was trying to figure out how to make a character look realistic with 400 triangles and a blurry texture, the team behind Skullmonkeys was sitting in a room covered in literal clay. They weren't just coding a game, they were sculpting a world. Every frame of animation, every bizarre creature, and every background was hand-moulded, moved by hand, and photographed frame by frame. There is a profound feeling in seeing actual fingerprints on a character model as they jump across the screen. It's a tactile, messy, and incredibly ambitious approach to a game design that feels like a middle finger to the corporate polish of the late 90s. Skullmonkeys is a visual anomaly on the PlayStation 1, a game that doesn't age because its art style isn't tied to the processing power of the hardware, but to the physical patience of the people who built it. It's a reminder that even in a digital medium, there is something irreplaceable about a world that feels like it was pinched into existence. It's weird, it's offbeat, and it's unapologetically handmade.
There we go. Look, Ma, I'm a skull monkey. In fact, I am Clog Monkey, the king of all skull monkeys.
Clog Monkey will never get away with this. My people are far too smart to accept him as leader.
First, we make an evil engine.
We make an evil engine.
Evil engine number 9.
Number 9.
To destroy the Neverhood.
Destroy the Neverhood.
Now let's get to work.
Welcome to the PSX Index. I'm Parascreen, and this is the show where I play and document all 1,278 PS1 games released across Northern America, and this episode is Index entry 215. We are making a radical pivot today. We've just survived the leather and techno grit of Blade and suffocating dread of the Clock Tower Mansion, but we are landing headfirst into a world that is significantly squishier, moving from the sharp edges of a titanium sword to the mouldable surfaces of Skullmonkeys is the kind of jarring transition that defines the structure of this project. We're trading urban vampires for a protagonist named Clayman, whose primary defense is being made of the same stuff as a primary school art project. This isn't just a sequel to the PC cult classic The Neverhood, it's a console-exclusive platformer that takes the high-retention visual style of Claymation and pillars it with some of the most bizarre game design on the system. We are going to explore how this game manages to be both a technical marvel and an absolute exercise in frustration, focusing on an era's design and the atmospheric brilliance that keeps it relevant in 2026. Grab your clay and try not to get squished. We're diving into a world where the only thing weirder than the enemies is the music.
You'll face madcap monsters and mayhem, all the while trying to pick up clues and perhaps tune in to a greater mystery.
These discs are all that are left of the true story. True story of the closing of the Third Age.
So ultra-intuitive, you'll never have to use the keyboard. Just point and click, and Clayman does the rest. You'll learn to follow Clayman, think like Clayman, solve his puzzles, live his nightmares. You will be part of an amazing adventure, uncovering what happened to his lost world of clay.
Once you know this truth, then you know what to do.
Over 60 puzzles will keep you guessing for up to 40 hours of interactive fun. Pound for pound, there's never been anything like The Neverhood. A must-have for any adventure gamer. Play The Neverhood. It'll blow you away.
To understand why Skullmonkeys exists, you have to look back at its predecessor, the Neverhood. While that was a slow-paced, surreal point-and-click adventure for the PC, the transition to the PlayStation forced a complete metamorphosis into a side-scrolling platformer. It's a fascinating pivot for a sequel. It kept the world building and the character Clayman, but swapped the logic puzzles for high-speed reflex testing. This wasn't just a port, it was a console exclusive reimagining that took the lore of a niche PC title and flew it into the most competitive genre of the 32-bit era. There is an irony in taking a character made of clay, something inherently slow and malleable, and making him the star of a precision platformer. The game acts as a bridge between the avant-garde art scene of the mid-90s and the mainstream demand for mascot-driven action. By bringing the Neverhood charm to the PSX, the developers created a cult classic that felt completely alienated from everything else on the shelf. It's a reminder that in 1998, the Index was still a place where the developer could take a massive risk on a sequel that shared almost no DNA with the original gameplay-wise, yet still managed to capture the feeling of the brand. From a technical perspective, Skullmonkeys is a marvel of stop-motion efficiency. In an era where 3D polygons were often jittery and pixelated, the use of pre-rendered claymation allowed for a level of visual fidelity that the hardware shouldn't have been able to handle. Every sprite is essentially a series of high-quality photographs of physical models, giving the movement a quality that is impossible to look away from. You can see the texture of the clay and the slight imperfections in the sculpting, which gives the game an organic, handcrafted atmosphere that digital graphics simply can't replicate. However, this visual style wasn't just for show, it dictated the entire game design. The backgrounds are layered with incredible detail, creating a sense of depth that was often missing in 2D platformers of the time. But there's a trade-off. Because everything is a photo of a physical object, the hitboxes can sometimes feel a bit nebulous compared to the pixel-perfect precision of a Mario or Mega Man. It's a classic case of the era's design, where the art is so ambitious that the gameplay had to scramble to keep up. It creates a unique friction, where you're constantly marvelling at how beautiful the world looks, while simultaneously yelling at the screen because Clayman's clay feet don't quite register the edge of the platform.
More you tune, better you feel. What's that bean for every meal? Bean, musical fruit. More you tune, better you feel. What's that bean for every meal? Just play your horn and make it toot with an SBD or a mega P. Let's do a cheer, let's give a hoot. You gotta love these beans, there's musical fruit. Beans, musical fruit. More you eat, more you tune, better you feel. Let's have beans for every meal. Beans, musical fruit. More you eat, more you tune, better you feel. Let's have beans for every meal.
You cannot talk about Skullmonkeys without talking about the music. In a decade where most platformers were leaning on the upbeat MIDI synth or a generic techno, Terry Scott Taylor delivers a soundtrack that can only be described as auditory clay. It is a bizarre avant-garde collection of acoustic guitars, nonsensical vocal harmonies, and lyrics that feel like they were written by a very clever child on a sugar rush. The music doesn't just sit in the background, it is a primary driver of the game's high retention and unique atmosphere. There is a natural feeling to tracks like the Little Plastic Castle or the Bonus Room song, which features a dry, deep hand vocal performance reminding you that you're talented and you're gonna go far. It's a meta-textural layer of humour that was incredibly rare for the era. The soundtrack acts as the heartbeat of the game, turning what could have been a standard, frustrating platformer into a surrealist's comedy show. It's the kind of music that stays in your head for decades, not because it's a catchy earworm, because it sounds like nothing else ever recorded for a video game.
Secret.
Don't let the squishy, colourful exterior fool you. Skullmonkeys is notoriously, unapologetically difficult. It is a game that demands the kind of precision that its own art style occasionally works against. Because the characters are made of clay, their physics have a certain momentum and weight that can make fine-tuned jumping feel like you're trying to steer a shopping cart through a ball pit. One wrong pixel, one slight mistiming of a double jump, and Clayman is sent back to the start of a grueling sequence. The reflection here is the realisation that this game was designed for an era when length was often dictated by how many times a player could fail. It's a brutal test of patience. The level design often features long stretches without checkpoints, forcing you to master the quirks of the clay hitboxes through pure repetition. It creates a dry sense of tension. You'll find yourself holding your breath during a particularly tricky jump, not because the enemies are scary, but because you know exactly how far you'll be sent back if you miss. It's a reminder that beneath the whimsical art and the funny songs, there is a core of old school, unforgiving game design that doesn't care about your feelings. The dry sense of humour in Skullmonkeys is perhaps the most endearing quality. It doesn't rely on the high energy puns of the other 90s mascots. Instead, it leans into a surreal, almost Python-esque absurdity. Clayman himself is a brilliant protagonist for this style. His blank, wide-eyed expression makes him the perfect straight man to the chaos happening around him. Whether he's casually being shot out of a cannon or wandering into a secret 1970s room filled with a shag carpet and disco lights, there is a consistent commitment to being weird just for the sake of it. The humour is baked into the game design through the id, a collection of bizarre enemies and environmental hazards that look like they were pulled from a frantic late-night sketching session. You'll encounter hamster shields and enemies that explode into confetti, all rendered with that same painstakingly stop-motion detail. It's a high-retention approach because you're constantly playing just to see what the next screen holds. The game rewards your curiosity with visual gags that feel like a personal conversation between the animators and the player, making the world of id feel like a living, breathing sketchbook.
Meet Clayman. He is the first offspring of DreamWorks Interactive. DWI, as it's called, is the joint venture between Microsoft and DreamWorks SKG. Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, David Geffen, and Bill Gates joined forces to produce interactive entertainment software.
The significance is, basically you've got these big names, and especially with Spielberg, you have the talent pool that he brings with him.
The Neverhood is DreamWorks Interactive's first release. While everyone else is using 3D graphics, special effects, weaponry, and blood and guts, DWI is using clay.
which casts real shadows, has real highlights, has real fingerprints on it and real bounce lights, and kind of has more of a believable effect. People keep saying that they believe that they're in the Neverhood when they play the game. They believe that they are Clayman because the character, he is real. Just his movements are fake.
Doug TenNapel created the Neverhood. He used 3.5 tons of clay to create a world of odd creatures, dark passageways, man-eating plants, and Clayman. Clayman, the unlikely hero who you, as the game player, help to defeat the evil foe and restore benevolence to the Neverhood. Steven Spielberg says he's thrilled with how the game turned out.
The Neverhood is a wonderful adventure, but it's also a zany adventure. It's filled with humor and sight gags. It's just great.
As we look at the broader era's design, Skullmonkeys serves as a fascinating case study in the friction between the art and the playability. It was an innovative masterpiece that prioritised aesthetic over the pixel-perfect control found in its contemporaries. While the claymation is breathtaking, it creates a unique challenge. The visual depth and the organic shapes of the platforms can make it difficult to judge exactly where Clayman's feet need to land. This often leads to moments where you've clearly made a jump, but the squishy hitboxes of the 32-bit era decide otherwise. This frustration is part of the game's identity. It's a critique of a moment in time where developers were still figuring out how to balance high-concept art with the rigid demands of a precision platformer, yet despite the occasional unfair death, the game remains magnetic. The trivia, the atmosphere, and the sheer audacity of the presentation keeps it from feeling like a chore. It's a bridge between the analog past and the digital future, proving that while 3D polygons were the trend, there was, and still is, an undeniable soul in a game that was literally built by hand.
Clock is dead and we want to celebrate it. He's pushing up daisies of former and belated. Bad guy asks why we're related. Well, Clog is dead. Follow the bouncing skull.
Yes, Clog's kaput. No longer operating. Retired expired. An estimation. Deceased. Switch up our shorts.
Do a pelvic thrust. Clog is dead. He was dirty and obscene and not a little mean. So we'll sing in one accord. Now that he's gone to his reward.
Clog is dead, he's history.
Why we shake our booties, no mystery.
He's gone at last. Time has passed.
We can go back to passing gas.
Yeah, Clog is dead.
Leaving the squishy, hand-sculpted peaks of id feels like waking up from a fever dream, where the world was made of Play-Doh and the soundtrack was a chaotic acoustic jam session. Skullmonkeys stands as one of the most visually daring entries in the PlayStation's library, a reminder that the 32-bit era wasn't just about the move to 3D polygons, it was about artists finally having the storage space to put their unfiltered, handmade visions onto a disc. It's a game that demands your patience but rewards your eyes and ears in a way that few platformers ever have. 215 games down, 1,063 to go. Trying to keep a project like this alive is a lot like working with clay. If you don't keep working the material and keeping it fresh, it starts to harden and crack. The PlayStation Index is a massive undertaking, and while I'm here documenting every single one of these 1,278 games, I can't do it without a crew that's dedicated as the animators who made Clayman's frame by frame. The algorithm has a nasty habit of ignoring the weird, offbeat treasures in favour of the same 5 top 10 lists you've seen 1,000 times. Right now, only 10% of you watching are actually subscribed. That means 90% of you are essentially playing a console with a faulty save battery. All the progress could vanish in an instant. If you want to see this clay-covered monolith reach its finish line, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop a comment to tell me your favourite track from this game. You can also follow the playlist on screen to see how far we've come from Index Entry 1. Next time on the PSX Index, we are trading the whimsical absurdity of clay for the dark Shakespearean tragedy of a dying world. We are moving from a hero who can be squished to a nobleman who refuses to stay dead. It's time to trade the bonus room for the blood-soaked pillars of Nosgov. Get ready for Index Entry 216, Blood Omen, Legacy of Khan. The clay has dried and the first is just beginning. I'll see you in the next entry.